Welcome to another episode of Life and Whiskey. As always, I'm Jordan, and just did the last video, which was just different bourbons that I was going to recommend. Kind of that you only need 5 whiskeys. I think you only need about 100 whiskeys. But I did a category of bourbon, and I wanted to say, there was a little bit of rambling going on and whatever else in that video. And I was just pulling different bourbons that I thought you should give a chance, some of which I thought maybe you hadn't heard of before or maybe overlooked. I'm doing the same thing here with Ryes now. I kind of pulled them all out this time, and I'm going to try and cut down on the rambling. And I'll give you my reasonings for why I think you should check out these Ryes. Now, number one, if you are not already a Rye fan, um, I will mention some Ryes that are closer to bourbons, and then some Ryes that are finished, and maybe those will kind of fall into a category that you're more familiar with that might be the direction you want to go. I don't know, the Ryes that I got, everybody seems to have made rye. Now, I was a rye fan, gosh, way back in like 2010, let's say, was when I really kind of came into rye. Started with Bullet Rye. I found Redemption Rye, MGP products, really what most people think of as rye, that rye profile, is what an MGP rye is, that floral, black licorice, eucalyptus smell, flavor profile, with a little bit of spice on it. That's what most people think of because rye was very popular pre-prohibition, and then after prohibition it really fell off. And it's kind of funny that I started getting into rye back in 2010, and as I was looking at doing a distillery, I was like, I'm a rye guy, I want to make a rye. And it wasn't very popular then. The bourbon scene was just starting to ignite and starting to take off, and so the big push, craft distilleries were just starting to hit the markets, early on. Craft distilleries, now you got to go back in time a little bit. Craft distilleries really weren't that popular. The early 2000s, maybe a handful of them had just started coming on. Legislation in different states around the country started allowing for craft distilleries to show up, and so they really kind of piggybacked off of the brewery boom that happened in the early 2000s. That kind of opened the door for the distilleries, and it was early on, right around that 2010 mark, when the craft distilleries started to take off. Almost nobody was doing rye at that point. Most distilleries were focusing on bourbon because that was kind of the hot commodity, and that was really pushing through that bourbon boom, which we saw finally catch up with things in like 2015 when we had that shortage. And so, with that, I guess I was just a little ahead of my time on the rise. But it was funny because right about then was when all the big distilleries, a lot of them buying MGP product or having somebody else distill some rise for them. They were just starting to barrel things, so that 4 to 6 years later, right around that 20, 16, 17, 18 mark, right in there was when we started to see this boom into rye start to push forward. And that's when pretty much all the mainstay lineups started to come out. Woodford, Old Forester, Knob Creek, Jim Beam, Wild Turkey, pretty much every big name, Sazerac, they all got their name out there as having a rye. And some of those started with some MGP products. Others had their own products that they were pushing to market. And again, I'm not knocking MGP. They make great whiskey. It just happens to be the largest majority of the different labels that you see out there. So I'm picking some stuff here that isn't necessarily, actually, I don't think I have any MGP out here at all. I want to just highlight these ryes for you as something that either A, if you're not a rye person, to check out, and B, if you are a rye fan, maybe you've overlooked them or not given them a try, and I think you really should. So the first one up is going to be Woodford Reserve Rye. Now, if you, and actually I'll put up there, I'm going to say the same thing about all of these. Woodford Reserve, Old Forester, Wild Turkey, Jim Beam, Knob Creek. Now, all of these brands you'd probably most recognize as being bourbon. I would say that the Woodford Reserve is the closest to a bourbon that you're gonna get as far as a rye. Now, I have not done the research or looked into what the mash bill is on it, but my memory of Woodford Reserve is that it was very, very smooth, very, very well, we'll just see here, because I think that it super smooth. You would not I don't know if you'd pick that out as being a bourbon, or sorry, being a rye, other than it has a pretty peppery finish on the end of it, but it's just really smooth, really round, and it has more bourbon notes in it than what you would expect from a rye. So if you're a bourbon fan, check out the Woodford Reserve rye if you're looking to get into ryes. And if not, it's just a really good rye. All the ryes that I picked out, I just think are really well done. Same with this Old Forester. Old Forester rye, it's really well priced. I want to, so that's a liter for starters. So a liter of Old Forester rye will come in at the 100 proof, and it comes in at $33.99 for a liter. I mean, that's really, really reasonably priced. The problem you have with ryes is most ryes start right around $35. Okay, that's where most rye prices are set. I got a couple here that go under that, and I think you should check those out. But $35, especially for craft stuff, is right where you're going to be on most of your ryes. And I think this Old Forester, it's a great value, but it's also a great rye. Very bourbony in flavor. So again, it would be a good one to get you over that. This Jim Beam rye, man, I just got nothing wrong to say about that. The Wild Turkey 101, just like the Wild Turkey 101 bourbon, the 101 rye is just a nice, good product. You know, it's well aged, it's well rounded. I got nothing bad to say about that. The Knob Creek, if you're a Knob Creek fan of whiskey, you're probably going to be a Knob Creek fan for their rye as well. And I guess I would say that about all of these distilleries. If you're already a fan of that distillery, you're probably going to like their rye products because they're not so far off the mark of their bourbon products that you wouldn't recognize them. So if you like the distilleries, you're probably going to like their ryes. As you know, if they're already coming into it from the bourbon side of things. So check out any of these if you haven't already. I would recommend any of them. It's hard to go wrong. The big distilleries, they're big for a reason and they just do it right. So that's what I'm going to say about all these. But I think your best bang for the buck from the big distilleries is going to be these Old Foresters. Next, we'll go into these two here. Rittenhouse, Bottled and Bond, and Old Overholt bottled and bond. Now, Old Overholt's kind of that Pennsylvania style rye, so you get a little bit more of that grainy, spicy flavor in there. It's not your classic MGP floral characteristic, but man, just a good sipping, good drinking whiskey under $20. No faults. More in line with what a classic pre-prohibition style would be, and 100 proof, it's excellent. There's also a non-bottled and bond Old Overholt, also good, but go for the bottled and bond. It's worth the extra $2 that you spend. It's one of my favorite ryes all around. Not just because it's cheap, but it's just an all around one of my favorite ryes. The other one that is, like, again, these would be my daily drinkers if I was going to be drinking rye all the time. This Rittenhouse rye, again, a bottled and bond product. $18. Sorry, and I misspoke on this one. I guess this one was a little bit more expensive. $26 is what I paid for the bottled and bond. The non-bottled and bond is $15. So a little bit more than I had previously mentioned, but still absolutely excellent. You can't go wrong with either of these. The Rittenhouse tends to have a slight more bourbony profile, but still very recognizably rye. Kind of a blend of a bourbon and a Pennsylvania style rye. So check out those. None of them are too bitey, too spicy, but man, they're like, the Old Overholt is known as being a little bit of a spicier rye profile, but personally, I don't find them too spicy, too bitey. I think they're kind of just right. Another one that I don't think too many people are paying attention to, because I see it sitting on the shelves everywhere all the time, is this Noble Oak Double Oak. So it's a finished rye, and it's a cheap finished rye. It's $36.99, so $37. It's not mind-blowing, but it's a really good, it's finished in with port wine oak staves, okay? So it has a little bit of a sweeter profile in there. It's a really nice balance of rye whiskey and having that extra finishing cask note present with it. And anytime you put port with something like Angel's Envy or whatever, you're gonna get something pretty nice. So for 37 bucks, I think this one's kind of a sleeper that a lot of people aren't paying attention to. It's a really good rye. It's a nice finished rye. If you like finished ryes, then jumping up here, this one really difficult to find, and you're not going to find this exact bottle unless you buy it from Blackwell's, because this was a store pick. But this Katokin Creek Barrel Select Rye, it's a finished rye, and I mean the color on it has that really nice dark red burgundy color. It's just absolutely excellent. I can't say enough good things on it. Definitely go check out the review that I did of this one. Huge fan of it. So if you're a rye fan and a finished rye fan, definitely check out Katokin Creek. And of course, I can't really talk about rye and not talk about what everybody already knows, but High West, that distillery, their Rendezvous Rye, their Double Rye, I mean, they make a ton of different things. Go back, watch all my videos on the Rendezvous Ryes. I have, I don't know, 4 different Rendezvous Ryes that I've checked out now and compared, kind of back to back to back ones. I think I got 19, 20, 21, and 22, I think, for the years for the releases. Check those out. I'm not really going to mention those because I think you need to be kind of a rye person, and most people are familiar with those. And I guess if you're familiar with High West, then you're probably familiar with this Midwinter Night's Dram. It's that Rendezvous Rye then finished in a finishing barrel. I think this one is port barrels. Now, this is the first bottle of this that I've had. This is Act 10. This is their 2022 release. If you go and look on WhiskeyTube here and watch all the different reviews of this, the previous years supposedly is better than this. Now, I've only had just a couple sips of this, and I find this to be absolutely amazing. So I could only imagine what the previous years were. And if you can find any of those from some sort of magic, awesome. Because supposedly they were cheaper. I paid $140 for this one. So super expensive. So you better really like what you're getting into. But I absolutely love this bottle, and I was a big fan of that. You know, keep an eye out for when I get over this cold, and I can do a review of that for you. It was good. So the Midwinter's Night Dram, it's just an excellent, excellent rye. The other one is Sagamore Rye. Again, I just picked this bottle up in Indiana. So I paid $84.99, so $85. Pretty spendy. Same with that Katokin Creek. What did I pay for that one? I paid $90 for this Katokin Creek, but store pick and a finished rye, I think it was worth it. But $85 again, pretty spendy. But if rye is your thing, especially finished rye, highly recommend this. I haven't done a review of it. I've only merely tasted it, and it is mind-blowingly good. It's Sagamore Spirit Sherry Finish Rye. It's their Reserve Series, which I think is part of their one of their mainstay lineups. It's finished in PX Sherry casks. This is batch 1A, bottle 215. So it's a blend of straight ryes. And it's 100 proof. And man, this one, the depth of flavor on that, this and this Katokin Creek are very comparable in flavor profiles, kind of similar ways of finishing it, but man, a really good finished rye is hard to beat in my opinion. And I think this Sagamore Spirit is one of those. So definitely check that out when I get it done, I guess. So that's kind of what I got for these ryes here. I do have a ton of other ones. You know, I got Jack Daniels. I didn't put that one up there. Jack Daniels, surprisingly, a really, really good rye. You wouldn't expect them to be in the rye game and to be doing it well, but man, it's just really good. Yeah. Another one, again, for some reason, all the main ones, this is not far off. It's spicy bourbon. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know this at all. I'm just throwing this BS out there, but I would bet that most of the big bourbon guys are making high percentage corn rye. So to be a rye, to be a straight rye, to be a rye, it needs to be at least 51% rye. I would not be surprised if these guys are somewhere in the 40s for the next grain, right? So if it's like 51% rye, 52, 55, whatever, and then like 40% corn, I would not be surprised at all because these all kind of have that really bourbon-esque flavor profile to them. And I'm not going to argue with that. But like Tin Cup Rye, I had that. That was not a bad one, but it's not, something worth really going out and after. Sazerac Rye, it's okay. Redemption, Bullet, Minor Case, those are all MGPs. Michter's, not a bad one at all. It doesn't stand out in the crowd to me, but it's good. But these guys, I really suggest that if you're not already a rye fan, check them out. If you're coming off the bourbons, go to your favorite bourbon distillery and get their version of rye. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. And if you're in for something a little bit different, step outside of the bourbon realm, check out the Rittenhouse and the Old Overholt, kind of that Pennsylvania style rye. And then if you were looking for something just to elevate things to the next level, if you do know that you are a rye fan, check out Katokin Creek or that Sagamore Spirit, one of the finished ryes. And this Noble Oak seems to be pretty much available everywhere, and it's cheap. So this does not have the depth of flavor as the Katokin Creek or the Sagamore Spirit, but if you're looking for just a nice, good, easy drinking finished rye, I highly recommend this one. So, Noble Oak. There you go. I was a big fan of the Noble Oak bourbon as well. And if you know what? Now that I'm thinking about this, I drank through several bourbons and other whiskeys here recently, just trying to use up some of my stock. And so I don't have bottles for all of the different things I should be putting out there in some of these videos. I'm sure I'm forgetting some. So go ahead, drop in the comments down below whether you think I'm full of crap or not, or whether you think these are worth a hoot or not, and what I should have been putting in my list here. But this small selection of ryes only represent about a third of my rye collection. And if you go back to my bourbon video, that was maybe a fifth of my bourbons that I have on hand. So, like I said, I'm trying to throw some things out there that maybe you're not already familiar with, or if you're kind of familiar with some things, maybe something that you forgot about that's worth going back and taking a second look at. So there you go. There's my ryes. Thanks for watching. You guys have yourselves a great day. I do greatly appreciate it. As soon as I'm over this cold, we'll be right back into this section here. We'll be finishing up some reviews, and then maybe we'll get into some blind taste tests. Maybe I'll drag my wife down here on camera with me and do some stuff, or some friends, get some of their input. Who knows what we'll be doing. But thanks for watching. You guys have yourselves a great day. We'll catch you in the next video.